Hi, my name is Lauren Bialystok. I'm Associate Professor in the Department of Social Justice Education at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, and I'm in Toronto. I wrote a case study about a real event that happened in Toronto about 10 years ago, and it related to religious accommodation of a Muslim minority in the public school system. And when I was writing the case, and then when I had a draft and I was ready to test it out, I was thinking about a few questions related to accuracy and verification. First, I was basing the case on real events, and I had mainly journalistic sources to rely on to get to the information about what happened in the case. But I chose to write it in a semi-fictional way. I didn't want to name actual names. I didn't want to try to speak for real people. And I also wanted to thread together some information that wasn't necessarily about this particular event, but that seemed related. So I took some liberty there, but I wanted to make sure that everything I said was still plausible and that the characters weren't caricatures. So that was one thing I wanted to check. But the sort of broader and more challenging thing for me was that I was writing about some issues pertaining to religion and race that deal with communities of which I am not a part. And I was acutely aware that I might be seen as trying to speak for a minority community without knowing much about them. So to that end, I tried to use sources and then get confirmation of what I'd written that would make sure it was a fair and balanced representation where there was still a dilemma here, but it wasn't just lapsing into stereotypes or misrepresenting facts about Islam or things that are happening in the Muslim community. So I had one great source, which was a PhD dissertation from a former student, which looked at the experiences of Muslim girls in a public school system near Toronto. So I used that, and then I spoke to her once I had a draft of the case. And then I also have a longtime friend who I initially met as a student, who works in the Muslim community doing education and outreach and bridging with different communities. And I asked him to verify my presentation of Muslim practice in the actual case study, as well as the dynamics of the community and whether it came across as fair and respectful. And I think there's always more work that can be done here. There's different ways that we can go about this question of the politics of representation and who has authority to write about what. But I think that in a minimum, we get a better case and we're on firmer ethical ground if we interact with primary sources and with individuals who have different perspectives and especially can confirm the way that a vulnerable community is being represented and say that it's acceptable. So that's how I went about it. I think the life of the case will tell me more about how well I struck that balance and what else might be a useful strategy.